So today what I'm talking about is very, very, very fundamental. And it's a huge decision you have to make when you find the treasure. Not in fantasy land, not just out having a lark and you think you're looking for the treasure subliminally. I'm talking about if I actually go out. Again, I kind of think of these things in my own terms, but I realize people watching this, a lot of people are looking for it. Here's the thing we all have to be extremely conscious of. What are we going to do the minute we find that treasure? You find the treasure. It was right where it was supposed to be. And you find it. And Forrest Fenn basically says Terry Scant and Marvel Gaze. Some people, for some reason, read that to mean stick around and look around or something. I read it the complete opposite. I think Terry Scant means don't tarry long. Scant, shortly. Terry Scant. Terry, shortly. In Marvel Gaze, he's actually said that. He has said, I know when people open this chest, they're going to sit there and just be staggered at what it looks like because it's a treasure chest, you know. But I think he's even said in interviews, you don't want to just hang around. You don't want to go, oh my God, look what I did. And if there's people in the vicinity, which there very well could be, this treasure spot is not supposed to be that far from civilization. For him to go in and out twice in one afternoon from a parked sedan, he's not out in the middle of nowhere. So you find the treasure. You have to make a very, very, very big decision right away. And that decision is, are you just going to grab that treasure? Are you just going to bury that treasure? I mean, not bury the treasure. I'm sorry, I literally just blinded myself shortly with that sunlight. Are you going to just pick up that treasure and go put it in your car without a second thought and drive home? Or are you going to do what a lot of people say you legally need to do, and that's report it? And that's a big decision. I think a general rule of thumb for the national parks, the national forest system, for almost everything is, certainly if you're in your town, I'll read you a little something that happened to a guy recently. Yeah, boy, he got screwed over. he kind of should have been, though. I'll tell you about that in a second. You're supposed to turn things in like buried treasures, or hidden treasures in this case. Or basically any find of anything of value. Believe it or not, you're really supposed to turn it in. If you're in a small town and you find, you know, a wallet with $100 in it, maybe not the biggest amount of money in the world, you're really supposed to turn that in. You're supposed to make, and I think that's probably a law in most of the states and most of the townships and almost everywhere. You're supposed to turn it in with thinking being there's someone out there that lost it. So the overall general concept and ethic of it is you want to get it back to the person. You may or may not get something for doing that. You may just get a pat on the shoulder. You may get a reward. You may get nothing. But that's really what you're supposed to do legally. Listen to what happened to this guy. And I think Forrest Fenn also has said that. I think Forrest Fenn said that in a national park, at least, he understood it to be that you're supposed to turn something like this into the park director. And then he got kind of goofy about whether he would actually, though, say someone should do that. I mean, he always kind of leaves it up to you, right? I'm going to get to what I'm going to do shortly, but and I have qualms about what I'm going to do, but you do what you got to do. What happened to this one guy, though? He was a public defender, a lawyer in Georgia. He found a $10,000 diamond ring in a parking lot, and he failed to report it to the county sheriff's office. When the owner realized that the ring was gone, they had lost the ring, they were able to they were able to remember where they thought they had been, the parking lot, and they looked at surveillance cameras, which is turning out to be just the boon for law enforcement now. Ever watch any of these shows on ID? I think I like to watch them, although a lot of them it gets repetitive. I don't watch them as much as I used to. You've seen one dead body, you see them all. But man, cameras now are solving all the crimes. Just like over in England with those kids that killed the little kid. Remember those guys? And they were just walking through town with them, and and then that's how they caught him. Well, anyway, so they go back to this parking lot, and they realize, they see this guy, and they recognize this lawyer. He's a lawyer. He's in the legal business, so he's in the justice system. So they see him pick up the ring, and he was arrested on charges of theft of lost property. How's that for a law? Authorities said the charge was based on a failure to, quote, take reasonable measures to restore the property to its owner. So when you find some places, a lot of places I'm sure, when you find anything of value, you have a legal responsibility to return it to its owner. And if you don't do that and they catch you, you can get in trouble. Oh, and here's a caveat there. I forgot about this. It can be even worse if you recover stolen property. In other words, if that ring, that $10,000 ring had been stolen, you don't know that, but you pick it up and you covet it, you put it in your pocket, you can be accused of being the original thief, and with possession itself being persuasive evidence, it could just be a huge hassle. I mean, it gets very complicated. And then here you are, Mr. Innocent, supposedly, and you're in big trouble with the police. Something else to think about. Here's something that happened in Florida. I think this was 2013. People were scuba diving, and for treasure. They were specifically looking for treasure, and they actually found, scuba diving, some gold chains, coins, and a ring worth, those three things, the chains, the coins, and the ring, were worth $300,000. Now, there's a little bit of an aside to this, because the area of the ocean floor that they were looking at had already been leased by a treasure hunter, a professional treasure hunter, who was paying for the right to search this part of the ocean. Whether or not they knew that, I don't know. But when they, excuse me, long story short, when they went to get the jewelry estimated, it became obviously common news, and the state of Florida stepped in. The state of Florida gets right off the bat 20%, and then to add injury to what's the old saying? Insult to injury. The guy who had originally leased the land for doing his treasure hunting, for his treasure hunting company, he's a guy named Brent Brisbane, who's discovered a number of treasures. He was able to claim 40% of it. So here are these people out there, they're scuba diving, they find this stuff, and then they find out that guy's very noisy. They find out that they lose 60% of the treasure right off the top, and that's before taxes. So that's just a couple of examples, and I'll give one more, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do when I find the treasure. There was a case called Cesarini versus the United States. I'll just do a very, very short overview of what happened. Back in 1957, some people buy a piano at a yard sale for $15. In 1964, I have to think, 7 years later, they're cleaning out the piano and they find $5,000. Apparently the bills are in pretty bad condition, so they decide, well, let's go to the bank and let's get new bills. Nothing wrong with that. So they go there. Then, of course, the bank is notified of this transaction to get the bills replaced. No big deal, but bottom line is the people then took that money and they did something that was quite unusual in my opinion. Trying to be lawful citizens, they actually put on their 1964 return this $5,000. But then they deduct it because they say it's not income. It's almost like they're kind of saying to the IRS, look, we want to be honest people and say we just happen to come across $5,000, but we don't want it to actually declare as part of our income because we don't think it is income. And so therefore, we want to just kind of let you know we have it, but please don't hit us up for the money. And oh, by the way, they thought they had a refund coming of $836. I'm not, and this is going to kind of back up what I'm going to say when I get to the point of what I'm going to do. Well, the IRS, of course, turns around. As we know, the IRS tends to do in situations like that, and they go, no, this is income. Now, this would have been precedent setting at the time. I'm not sure if the precedent still holds up, but I will say this. The idea of what's going to happen to this treasure, I've been listening to a lot of various legal opinions. I've read them on the net. I've seen people, the Forrest Fenn people, blogging about what they're going to do and what they've read and what they think. And you know what, folks? It's all over the place. I mean, people say you have to report it to the park director, you have to report it to the local constabulary, wherever it is. You have to